I was wrong about Jimmy Butler. Jimmy Butler, he came into the league with the Chicago Bulls, right? And he played with Derrick Rose. Now, this was post 2011 Derrick Rose, after the knee injury, right? So Derrick Rose was limited. And Jimmy Butler took time to become the player that he is right now. And of course, I've known about him. I mean, he has been good in the past, and I never saw how good he could be when he was in Chicago, right? He was supposed to be what Klay Thompson became to Steph Curry, the right-hand man, the Scottie Pippen of Derrick Rose. It never worked out, right? And so I kind of just wrote him off, right? Like, I knew he was good, but I didn't think he was good enough to make an impact on a franchise, right? He got traded to Minnesota, and that's when this view of him that I have really cemented itself. Because I remember watching Jimmy Butler play against the Houston Rockets in 2018, and it was an ugly series. At the time, the 2018 Houston Rockets were one of the best teams I've probably ever seen offensively, right? And they absolutely dismantled the Minnesota Timberwolves in 5 games. I remember watching that series and Jimmy Butler just struggling to stay in front of James Harden. The Timberwolves just didn't have an answer for James Harden. And that kind of cemented Jimmy Butler's image in my mind. I thought, okay, that's what he is, right? He's a relatively good player. He can make an all-star, but he's kind of maybe on a level of Andrew Wiggins, or maybe lesser, right? I never really thought much of him, right? And I heard the stories that he was good, right? But I never really paid attention to it. One of the stories was just going into practice and absolutely clowning and making a mockery of the Minnesota Timberwolves starting 5. So apparently he took 5 bench players and he challenged the starters on the Timberwolves and absolutely wiped the floor with them. And Jeff Teague, an NBA point guard, a veteran point guard, he's told a story about this and about how Jimmy Butler just came in and he was pissed off that the Timberwolves sucked, and he just kind of like came in there, swore at everyone, and he said, y'all gonna play me, and then he took bench players and absolutely wiped the floor with Cat, right? And him and Karl-Anthony Towns had a falling out because, as I remember it, he thought Karl-Anthony Towns was too soft, and he thought the whole of Minnesota Timberwolves were soft, and that's why they never won anything. That's why he wanted to trade out, and he was partially right. I mean, look at the Timberwolves right now, right? The Timberwolves, their brand is Karl-Anthony Towns and getting knocked out of the NBA playoffs every year in the first round. Nothing's really changed except for when Anthony Edwards came. But back to Jimmy Butler. After the Minnesota Timberwolves, he got shipped off to Philadelphia. Now, Philadelphia is probably kicking themselves in the butt because they let him go. I think they refused to pay him money. His tenure with the Philadelphia 76ers wasn't long, right? He was there, and as I remember it, Joel Embiid and Jimmy, they got along. In fact, they still get along. And in fact, Jimmy was advocating for Joel Embiid to win MVP this season. So they still get along. There was no bad blood like how he had bad blood with Karl-Anthony Towns. And they never got the job done in Philadelphia. It just never metastasized. So after that, he got shipped off to Miami. And I knew of Jimmy, right? Like, I've heard Jimmy Butler with the Miami Heat, but every single time I heard in the last 2-3 years the Miami Heat are gonna be good, I never really took them seriously. Even when they made the NBA Finals in 2020, I never really took them seriously. Why? Because it was the bubble, right? It was kind of like, it's the same reason why people knock LeBron for that bubble ring. It's not your traditional NBA season where you grind 82 games, you're grinding the playoffs, and you have to get through the grind of getting on planes and flying thousands of miles across the country to play a game every second day. That's the difference between the bubble and the regular NBA, right? And so I never really took the Miami Heat seriously. I saw everybody was playing their best basketball in a bubble. Why? Because they never had to deal with the fatigue that comes with traveling, right? With the fatigue that comes with traveling 8 hours and then jet lagged and all that. That all plays a factor into NBA basketball and who wins the championship. That's what I like about sports. And so I never really took the Miami Heat seriously. All the rave about Jimmy Butler in the bubble, I never really took it seriously. I was like, oh, whatever. I mean, it's a fluke, right? Anyone could have done this. It's the bubble. Everyone's playing at their best. We remember Jamal Murray and Donovan Mitchell literally dropped 50 points each in a game, and it was just a crazy period of time, right? So I never really cared for the Miami Heat. Even when it was like, oh, the Miami Heat, pose a problem in the Eastern Conference, the Miami Heat, this, that, and the third. I was like, I just don't, it's not really, right? And then there was this season. And I had that same view up until this series.